Welcome back to the Are You Strong show. I have an awesome guest on today, and where do you hear this young man's accolades? The first thing is coming out of high school in Pennsylvania. This guy was the top recruit at ESPN, five-star recruit, went to Penn State, had a great career there, freshman All-American, transferred to UMass, became an All-American there as well as the number one tight end in the country, if I got that right. And left UMass, became an assistant coach at Arizona State under Herm Edwards. That I want to talk deep about that.
Yeah.
And was a finalist for the Jason Witten Award for College Football Man of the Year, which tells you the character of this young guy. He's a television broadcaster for CBS Sports. He's got his own podcast called the Next Up Podcast, where he interviews college coaches or top coaches around the country. And founder of the College Sports Company, where they work on sports media and NIL company, and they raised over 5 million bucks. That is impressive. But this is what's really cool. His dad, All-American tight end, his brother, quarterback at Colgate, and his sister played field hockey at St. Francis University. I can only imagine the intensity and the competition under that roof. But has his own podcast, which is great. Instagram, 94,000 followers. His college sports company has 70,000 followers. YouTube has 38,000 subscribers. Welcome to the show, Adam Breneman.
Jeff, appreciate you having me. That was a great intro. I may have to clip that and use it for my podcast from now on
Yeah,
for
I mean,
for my introduction.
and there's a lot more. I just couldn't list it all. I don't think I have enough time to list them all out. But Adam, thanks for being on the show. I have a ton of questions to ask you, and my voice is going a little rough. My daughter got married on Saturday, so I'm like
Oh
from all
wow.
the yelling and
Okay.
screaming, so I'm kind of a little rough
Con-
still.
yeah,
Um,
congratulations. That must have been fun. Fun
oh, it
weekend.
was huge. It was
Yeah,
huge. Very emotional. Very emotional.
good.
But before I start ripping with the questions, why don't you just tell the audience just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, where do I begin? Well, you mentioned a few of my, accolades, I guess you could call them, in the background of my career. My career, most people know me from football, and my football career was a five-star recruit in high school. I thought I was the man at the time. You know how it is when you're
Oh
16
yeah.
years old and everyone in the world tells you how good you are. Went to Penn State, was a freshman All-American, had a ton of success, saw the really high highs of being an athlete, and then saw the really low lows and went through some adversity, spent 2 years injured at Penn State, ended up, thought I was done playing at one point, ended up transferring to UMass and had a lot of success at UMass 2 years in a row, was a two-time All-American and a Mackey Award finalist for the best tight end in the country, which is tough to do at a place like UMass.
Yeah.
Not many finalists for that
Yeah.
award come out of there, but was at the Senior Bowl and ready for the NFL draft and failed my physicals because of my left knee injury. So a few times I had been at the top of the top and knocked down.
Yeah.
And I think in life, there's only one of the only consistent things in life is that you're going to face adversity and things don't always go how you think they're going to go. If you would have told me when I was 16 years old that I was going to be a two-time All-American at UMass, I would have laughed you out of the room.
Right.
But life's not what happens to you; it's how you respond to it. And after my playing career, spent a couple years coaching, had a lot of success there. Was the youngest coach in the country for Herm Edwards. Was a tight ends coach at 25 years old, and we all got fired. We got fired when I was 26 years old, and I left Arizona State not knowing what I wanted to do. And after some talking to some people and figuring out, always had kind of a business background. I went all in a sports media career. And if you ask me what I do today, there's a lot of different ways to describe it. I would say at my core, I'm a sports media entrepreneur. I'm building businesses in sports media, and one is around my personal media brand and my podcast and my content and my college football analysis and broadcasting, and other is the college sports company. Like you mentioned, we've raised millions of dollars and have been very successful working with schools around the country. And recently started a business as well with my brother Grant, who you mentioned, called Arvello Media, which is a company where we work with athletes, sports brands on their social media content. We're basically a sports media marketing agency, and that's been that's been around for 6 months and has been super successful. So it's been great. And on top of all that, I'm broadcasting games for CBS right now and have a deal with Yahoo Sports, talking college football for them. So a lot going on, a lot of it's been a ton of success in a short period of time for this. But for me, it's always looking at the bigger picture and understanding that adversity is going to come. It always comes in life. I know that's a dark way of thinking about things, right? I say that sometimes to people, and they're like, "Why are you saying that?" I'm like, "Well, nothing. It's not always going to be great for year after
Right.
year after year, and it's just all about how you respond to it." So there's one thing I've learned and constant in my life, and one thing I'm really proud of. I think it's how I've responded to different ups and downs and challenges in my life.
Yeah, I think Adam, all the people they see all the success you're having,
Yeah.
and because you're all over the place. I see all this stuff you're doing, which is really cool, but they don't understand the probably the struggles and the craziness that goes on behind it to get there.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I
and,
mean,
and
the amount of times that I had to reinvent myself in my career. I mean, I feel like I've lived 4 lives at 30 years old. It's kind of like you think about my playing career and then coaching and now media and the amount of times, Jeff, that I had sat there and I remember being on plane ride. I had just gotten fired at Arizona State, and I was thinking to myself, I thought I was going to be a 30-year-old head football coach. And I thought, by my age right now, that I'd be a head coach. I thought I'd be a head coach at Rutgers. Like I was like, I will be
yeah,
a head football coach by the time I'm 30. This is my future. This is my career. I remember I got fired. I was on a plane ride back home, and I was seeing some of my peers at other programs getting promoted around the country. I was seeing it on Twitter. So I saw another 27-year-old who was my peer. Name's Rashad Samples. He's at Arizona State now, or he's at Oregon now as the running backs
yeah,
coach, but he was at Arizona State after I left. I saw he got promoted to offensive coordinator, and you're seeing your peers it happen for them, kind of
yeah,
brings that reality to you. And I remember just literally window seat, aisle 12, like crying on this flight home. I'm 26 years old. Like, what has my life come to? And in the moment, you always think your life's over when
oh
that's
yeah,
happening.
yeah,
But just not being able to, to think I had all this success and now that ended. What's my next move? I feel like I'm behind.
yeah.
And again, as I said, I think from you have a choice and that happens. And I chose to not let that moment define me.
That's awesome. Now I got to ask you this question: Is what's it like to be 26 years old and working at a major school like that? And then what's it like getting fired? I mean, that's got to be like just mind bending.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, being at Arizona State was awesome for those 2.5 years I was there. Herm Edwards, Antonio Pierce, Marvin Lewis. There was so many legends in
Yeah,
coaching. It was like football heaven. You walk
yeah,
in every day, and Herm Edwards in the hallway, and Marvin Lewis, and all these greats. We had Jaden Daniels when we were there. We had all these great players that we were with. So I learned a ton, man. And I started there as a graduate assistant, making no money. I left. I had a great job for a year after I started playing, but left that job to go make $1,000 a month coaching at Arizona State as a GA. And it was a risk I took, but after 10 months, got promoted to tight ends coach and was the youngest position coach in the country. And I learned a lot. Was around some really good people. Also learned a lot about things about who I don't want to be and how I don't want to handle situations and learned a lot about um, the things you're willing to do to achieve success versus almost morality. And we got fired at Arizona State. That whole coaching staff got fired, and it was a tough time because for so long I was used to my name being in the newspaper for positive reasons, right?
yeah,
I was used
yeah,
to
yeah,
all the hometown paper writing stories about me. My parents used to clip all the newspaper articles. I would read the paper every day, hoping I was in it. For about a year there, I would open the paper every day, praying I wasn't in it that day because of all the news cycle around that Arizona State situation. So it was challenging. It was tough. It was embarrassing at times. I mean, it was
yeah,
embarrassing for me and my family. Um, there was regret with how we handled certain situations. But ultimately, I learned a lot from it. I'm proud of how I handled it at the end, and
yeah,
I I had a decision to make when that happened because I had a decision. Do I want to stay in coaching? Do I want to, what's my next path? And in some ways, I kind of flipped the whole scenario on its head because I went all in on media and, it almost in an audacious way. I went all in on media and started making videos right after talking about how I was a Division I coach and at Arizona State, and here's the tips for if you want to get recruited, and started broadcasting games. and started to kind of leverage that my coaching career for success in media. Because I thought to
Yeah.
myself, I was 26 at the time. After I got done feeling bad for myself for 2 days, I thought to myself, I have been a 5-star recruit. I was an All-American at 2 different schools. I've been through the transferring process. I also have been a Division I Power 4 coach and was the youngest in the country. I have more experience at 26 years old in college football than almost anyone has.
Yeah.
And if I can talk about this at a high level and share this with the masses on social media and through sports media businesses, that I could build something special. And that's when I went all in on it. So I kind of flipped the situation on its head and said, I'm going to turn a negative into a positive situation.
That's awesome. And most guys would crumble, right? And you turned it around. You turned it into this monstrosity of success, which is great. So I'm going to bounce around a little bit,
Yeah, go ahead.
in your life. And you mentioned before, you're a 5-star recruit. ESPN says you're one of the best players in the country. Recruiting today is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
The transfer portal is nuts. NIL is nuts. Everything is just so intense. What was the recruiting process like for you coming out of high school, with all that notoriety? How did you handle all that?
The recruiting process was nuts for me for about a year and a half, 2 years. I started getting recruited I'd say my freshman year of high school. Really picked up my sophomore year. I got my first offer from Boston College. Second offer was from Notre Dame. And after that, it was crazy. Like Brian Kelly came to my high school at Notre Dame, offered me, and next thing you know, I got 40 offers, and every school in the country is calling after my sophomore year. And it was a journey of, every single day racing home from school to check the mailbox because I would have 50 letters from coaches and wanted to see what was going on. It was constant phone calls and and coaches coming to my high school. I would leave class every day, new coach, Urban Meyer and Bill O'Brien and all these coaches from all over the country Greg Schiano coming to my high school to see me. I feel like at the time I got a little bit intoxicated with the process.
Mm.
And I think a lot of kids struggle with that today because it's a balance of, it is a once in a lifetime experience that I'm so thankful that I got to experience, but most importantly, my family and the people around me got to experience. I think about my high school head coach, Jim Cantafio, the fact that he got to go through that experience with me and he helped me get to that point. Then he got to come on my visits and got to be there when the big time coaches came in. The fact that my dad and my brother and my mom and my sister got to come on these visits with me and go, my dad and I sat with Nick Saban in his office for an hour. That's an experience my dad will never forget, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel like I got caught up in it too much, where you start to believe everything that they're saying, where you start to think that you're almost invincible and you start to read your own press clippings. And they're one of my favorite kind of themes about life is that if you listen to the noise when it's really good, then you also will listen when it's not good. You can't, it's hard to kind of say, I'm gonna listen to the praise, but I won't listen to the criticism. You got to not listen to anything and not believe it at all. And just kind of know who you are internally and stay the same every single day. I got caught up a lot in listening to the outside noise that when it was really good. And then in my career early on, when adversity came, I felt like I didn't handle it as well because I was so caught up in what everyone was saying about me. I was used to searching my name on Twitter to see what Penn State fans said about me when it was really good, because I wanted to see what the fans said. I wanted to see them say, oh, we can't wait till Adam Breneman gets to campus. He's going to change the program. That then when it was really bad and I wasn't playing well and I got hurt 2 years in a row, my habit was to look at what the fans were saying. And it wasn't good.
Yeah.
It was Adam Breneman's a bust. Get him out of here. He's a waste of a scholarship spot. And I think myself getting intoxicated in that process forced me into that a little bit. And I've learned a lot since then. But I tell young players a lot, enjoy the process, but don't let yourself get consumed by it and realize that it is a business process. And at the end of the day, coaches are good people, but they have a job to do. They're trying to sell you to come to their school. Their job is recruiting. So they're going to tell you shit you probably isn't true all the time.
Yeah. I mean, the scariest thing about what I think about college football and recruiting is their job is to out recruit you every year.
Yeah.
You come in and take somebody else's job.
Yep.
Well, then next year they got to find a guy to take your job. That's their
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
And I think some of the young kids get caught up in, oh, this guy loves me. This guy really cares about me. This guy really wants me for who I am. And
Hmm.
they might, and I'm sure there's a lot of them do, but every now and then you might say, hey, you know what? Why are they recruiting this guy now?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and nuts.
The coaches, the college football coaches who have the most success, I believe, are the ones who are the most authentic and transparent about those situations. And it's tough in today's college football because of the transfer portal. But I do believe that like radical transparency can you can avoid a lot of those situations. I was sat down with Coach Franklin yesterday at Penn State, and he talked about how with the transfer portal opening yesterday, just like no surprises in our program,
Yeah.
and that comes from being really transparent with players and letting them know, hey, you weren't good enough this past year, or we're trying to out recruit you,
Right.
force us to not be able to find that person that's better than you. And I
Yeah.
think that like that's the reality at every position in football, in sports. Everyone's trying to upgrade their roster constantly. So
Yeah.
the more you can be transparent about that, I do think those programs where will have more success when their players feel, you know, you can. It's another thing Coach Franklin says a lot, and from when I played for him, you can be really demanding of people if they know that you care. And
Mm.
I think that if you can show players that you care, and by because you care about them, you are transparent with them because you want what's best for them, and it's not transactional, it's transformational. That it allows you to have really tough conversations, and players respect you as a coach because you're willing to tell them things that maybe they did not want to hear.
Yeah. So what was that like? I mean, showing up Penn State, it doesn't get any bigger, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how many that stadium holds what, 110, 120,
Yeah,
something like that. You show up
110.
as a
Yeah.
freshman, five-star recruit, expectations are through the roof. What was it like your first week on campus, preseason football as a freshman?
My first team meeting at Penn State, I will never forget this. I was in I was brand new on campus, first week there. We have a team meeting, and it's I got there early in the spring, so I enrolled January of like 2013, and you know it was the season didn't start for a whole another 8 months or whatever. And we're in the meeting room, and they're doing introductions of all the new players because in the spring maybe 10 new guys joined the team, and I was one of them. And I introduced myself to the team. Adam Breneman, Cedar Cliff High School, tight end. And Bill O'Brien, I remember saying, "Hey Breneman," in front of the whole team. "Hey Breneman, how many stars do you have?" And I was like, "I got 5 stars, coach." And he was like, "No one gives an F in this room how many stars you have anymore. And I sure as hell tell you, Syracuse was who we played in the first game of the year. I sure as hell will tell you, Syracuse doesn't care how many stars you have either. It's time to work." And I sat down. But that kind of set the tone. And I love Bill O'Brien. That guy changed my
Yeah.
life and gave me confidence in myself and really taught me how to handle myself like a professional. But that was something I needed to hear because I think Bill O'Brien could tell I was a little bit intoxicated with the process
Right.
of being a 5-star in recruiting. And when I got to campus, he constantly would say, "No one gives a shit here how many stars
Yeah.
you have, man. No one cares." And
Everybody there's a five-star, right?
everyone, yeah, I mean, everyone's a big time recruit, and it was kind
Yeah.
of, hey, no one cares what you did in high school. Now you're part of a new team, and you get respected based on how you perform and how well you treat your teammates, how good of a teammate you are. No one cares
Yeah.
what you did in high school. No one
Yeah.
cares what you did last season. You know, if you're a junior, no one cares what you did your sophomore year because it's about how are you performing now and
Yeah.
how good of a teammate you are. So I thought that was always really impactful for me. And then Bill O'Brien would make jokes all the time. If I would like make a bad play in practice, I would Bill O'Brien or some of our coaches, they'd be like, "Oh, 5-star my ass. Are you kidding me?" You know, like stuff like that. So they had a good time with the 5-star thing, but I got humbled pretty quickly at Penn State. You know, despite I ended up having a lot of success my freshman year, but definitely was some ups and downs
Yeah.
early in training camp and in the season.
Right. So give me some highs and lows. You know, your Penn State career. I know you had some setbacks with some injuries. You know, what's your highest moment there? This was the most incredible moment, and what this was the toughest one I had to deal with.
Yeah, I would say at Penn State, definitely my freshman year went really well. Now it wasn't without some adversity. You know, I started my freshman year at Penn State, started the first few games at tight end, then got benched, and I was not playing well. I had a couple games. It was like game 4 or 5 of the season. Was not playing well. didn't have a ton of confidence. And I just got benched and never really had a conversation with Bill O'Brien about what happened during those middle few weeks. I remember talking to my dad, and I said to my dad, what do I do? It's not going well. Do I need to transfer? You start to have those thoughts. No, I'm not good enough. My dad said, why don't you just go talk to Bill O'Brien? Like, ask him to meet with you. Ask him to talk. He's a human being. He's a coach. And I texted Bill O'Brien and said, Coach, can I come talk to you? And I really respected Bill O'Brien in this. It wasn't like, here's a few times that worked for me. Bill O'Brien said, come to my office at any time and I'll leave what I'm doing to meet with you. And I did. I went there. He was in the middle of a recruiting meeting, walks out of the recruiting meeting. We meet in his office that same day. And he's like, listen, man, I know you have the talent, but you're not practicing well. And if you don't practice well, I don't trust you. He said, but we have a bye week coming up. So if you can show me you can perform well in this bye week, treat it like a game every day of practice. And if you play well, we'll give you reps in the game. You'll play again. Yeah. And I did exactly that. That conversation gave me the confidence hearing Bill O'Brien say, I know you can do this. I know you're talented enough. And I had a great performance during that bye week, and then ended up starting the rest of the season and rattled off 3 touchdowns in the final 3 games, had the longest touchdown by a tight end in Penn State history, and ended up being a freshman All-American. And I think about, if I would not have met with Bill O'Brien in that moment, I would never have become a freshman All-American. I would have been benched the rest of the season probably. But I think a few lessons, like one, coaches are human beings, and just showing them that you care can help a lot. And just the communication, the radical transparency of, hey, you're not good enough right now. Here's what you can do to get better. And then I thought Bill O'Brien was always good at knowing what his players needed. After that moment, I made a big play in practice. And it was in that bye week practice. And I went up and caught a pass over someone's head for a touchdown in practice. And I remember Bill O'Brien showed that play to the whole team in a team meeting room. And it wasn't like singling just me out. It was in the midst of his whole spiel that day about, I think his whole speech that day at the team meeting was about, hey, like, we have some really good players in this room, and like we're good enough to make a run at this thing and win every game on our schedule. And he was showing a few plays of some of our best players making plays. It was Allen Robinson and Christian Hackenberg, and he was showing some plays. And then he threw my play in there that was like, showed me making a play. And he was like, this guy's a damn good tight end. I'm telling, like, look at that play right there. This guy will play on Sundays, that kind of deal. And that small moment gave me so much confidence for the rest of the season that he did it in front of my peers as well. And I felt that moment really changed my career.
Adam, that's a moment you'll carry forever.
Yeah.
You're going to tell that story forever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And now, are you still tight with him?
Yeah. I mean, I had him on my podcast about a year ago, maybe less than that. It was really cool. So I went back. Christian Hackenberg was my quarterback in my recruiting class. We played for Bill O'Brien together. So I had Bill O'Brien on my podcast. He did not know that I was bringing Christian Hackenberg to co-host that episode with me. So there's a really cool video of, Bill O'Brien seeing me, we hug, and he's like, oh, Hack's here too. And he gets all excited. So it's tough to stay in touch that much, but we talk every year, and he's been a big part of my career, my life. And like I said, gave me a lot of confidence.
And that must have been so surreal to come back now yesterday and interview Coach Franklin. How was that experience?
Coach Franklin's awesome, man. He has been such a big part of my career. And you think about someone that I barely even played for Coach Franklin. I played for Bill O'Brien my first year. Then Franklin came in a really tough time in Penn State history. And I was hurt 2 years in a row then. I hurt my knee and I missed 2 full seasons. I think I played 1 game in 2 years. But Coach Franklin was so supportive during that time, was so great with me and my family and what I needed. I again thought I was not going to play football anymore. I thought I was done. I thought my knee was that bad, and was really supportive. And then has been supportive of me at every step throughout my career. When I transferred to UMass, was very, very supportive. And that was before the transfer portal. So like, they didn't have to let me leave Penn State. And Coach Franklin helped me out. I transferred to UMass where we decided together that would be a good fit for me to get out of Penn State and go somewhere new for a fresh start. He helped me so much in my coaching career. Coach Franklin talks a lot about relationships and how powerful relationships are, and showing people that you care. And I always thought that was kind of corny coming from a football coach when you first hear it, like as a young player. but I saw what that means now throughout his career. And when I was at Penn State, I'm sorry, excuse me, when I was going to Arizona State, Coach Franklin helped me a lot getting that job. And I didn't even know. I had told Coach Franklin that I was thinking about coaching. We met, he gave me some advice. He said, hey, you should really try to go get a GA job at a big school around the country. We don't have any here at Penn State right now, but like, go talk to some other coaches and I'll help you out if I can. I was in the running for the Arizona State job. I had texted Coach Franklin just to give him a heads up because he was giving me some advice in the process. I said, hey, I'm in the running for the ASU job. Hope I get it. Appreciate all your help so far. Coach Franklin said, great. Thanks for filling me in. I got the Arizona State job. I get to Tempe, Arizona, and my first day on the job, I'm meeting with Herm Edwards and Zach Hill, the offensive coordinator. And Zach Hill, the OC, who's from the West Coast, has never met James Franklin before, ever, says to me, he's like, hey, I got a random call a couple of days ago from James Franklin. Said he got my number from my agent and told me that like I need to hire Adam Breneman as my GA at Arizona State. And he's like, just want to let you know that I didn't know if you knew Coach Franklin did that, but he did. He called me and said that if I didn't hire you, he was going to at some point. And I always thought that was a really cool moment because Coach didn't have to do that. I barely played for Coach Franklin. He's got a million things going on and takes his time out of his day to not only call someone, but call a coach he doesn't even know and find his phone number out of the blue. And I thought that was a really good story about the kind of person Coach Franklin is. And then throughout my coaching career, it was very helpful to me. And then even in media now, I mean, he's done multiple interviews with me, everything I've needed to propel my career, whether it's my broadcasting, podcast. Penn State's not Penn State, it's tough to get coaches to sit down for an hour-long interview. And that's not very common. Coach Franklin's done it twice with me now, and it gets very personal in those interviews. So I'm releasing that interview next week, which I'm really excited about.
That's awesome. So you mentioned that he was helpful in your transition in transferring from Penn State to UMass.
Yeah.
What was the motivating factor for you? I mean, you're at the biggest school in the country playing, kicking butt. What was your motivating factor to say, I'm going to leave here now and go to UMass?
Yeah, I transferred to UMass because I wasn't having success at Penn State and because I was hurt. I missed 2 years in a row at Penn State. And I, again, thought that I had actually briefly retired from football, another weird part of my story. But for like 4 months there between Penn State and UMass, I actually announced my retirement. I thought I was done playing. I thought I was officially done, and my knee was that bad. And it wasn't until a few months of hanging up the cleats that my knee started to feel better. One of my best friends to this day, Andrew Ford, who was my high school quarterback, transferred to UMass to play quarterback there. I also had a really good relationship with the head coach at UMass, Mark Whipple. Mark Whipple's son, Austin, was a quarterback at Penn State. So I got to know Mark Whipple through his son, Austin. Austin was my roommate at one point, so we were close friends. I got to know Mark Whipple. And Mark Whipple loved to throw the football to the tight end. Loved it.
Okay.
So there were a few factors that when I started to get healthy, I had a decision. Do I go back to Penn State? And Coach Franklin and I talked about this. And the thought was, do I go back to Penn State where I'm a hometown hero and come and think about this story. Adam Breneman retires from football, comes back to Penn State and ends up having a great career. Like, it's a great story in my hometown, where I'm from, newspaper coverage, all of that. But by that point in my career, I knew what was important to me. And it was no longer being the biggest story or getting the press coverage or being a legend. It was giving myself the fulfillment and success that I knew I could have in my football career. And I felt like the best place for me to do that was a place like UMass, where I was out of the media spotlight a little bit, where I could go kind of redefine myself. And I think it helped to go to I was the first 5-star ever to go to UMass, right? So I think that dynamic, and with my knee injury situation, it allowed me to, there were some special things I needed from a treatment standpoint. I needed to maybe not practice as much as other guys did because of my knee. And that would have been really challenging in a place like Penn State, where you have so many other good players. We had Mike Gesicki, who's now in the NFL, and Kyle Carter, and we had all these great tight ends there as well. So UMass ended up being a really good spot for me. And to this day, forever thankful for UMass, because the athletic director, Ryan Bamford, and Mark Whipple, the head coach at the time, UMass, I used to look back on my football career with really a lot of disappointment and a lot of almost something I didn't like talking about, to be honest with you. I wouldn't, after my Penn State career, I did not like talking about my football career because I was this 5-star recruit who was supposed to have this great career and it didn't pan out. But leaving UMass, despite the fact that I had the injuries and never played in the NFL, those 2 years at UMass where I led the country in receiving as a tight end and was a 2-time All-American and a John Mackey Award finalist allowed me to reach the success I knew I was capable of.
Yeah.
And it allows me today to talk about my career and be very proud of what I achieved and most importantly, what I overcame. So if it wasn't for that time at UMass, I'm not sure how fondly I would look back on my football career. And that place, really changed my life and all that success propelled me into the next part of my career.
Yeah. I mean, you just got thrown into adversity left and right. Right. So you go to UMass and you play with your high school quarterback.
Yeah.
How was that? Must have been like incredible. How was that?
Yeah, it was really cool. It was Andrew Ford. I mean, I'm in his wedding in a couple of months here in California. Again, we played together in high school, broke records together in high school. He went to Virginia Tech. I went to Penn State out of high school. I tried to get into Penn State, but it was too little, too late. And then he ended up transferring, and I was retired from football, and I thought that I was done, like I said. And then Andrew Ford started to talk to my dad and was like, "Hey, we should get Adam to like consider playing football again. He's looking pretty healthy." And my dad and Andrew conspired some scenario where they were like, "Hey, why don't you try running some routes in the backyard?" Andrew was over at my house, and we tossed the ball around, and I was like, "I feel pretty good." And then the situation became, well, maybe I should go to UMass, and it kind of went from there. But yeah, Andrew's been a big part of my life, and it's cool. It's a special thing to be able to play with your high school best friend in college and have those memories together. We had a third best friend of mine that part of the third piece of our trio from my hometown who transferred to UMass as well, a guy named Brighton Barr, who was a linebacker from my hometown and ended up coming to UMass as well. So all three of us went to UMass together, and Brighton ended up having a great career as well, had 100 tackles in the season at UMass. And it was really cool for our hometown. And we were having buses of people from Camp Hill, Pennsylvania, going to the UMass games because we had my family, Andrew Ford's family, Brighton Barr's family that were kind of all supporting UMass for a couple of years there.
Man, that must have been just so surreal. Now, when you guys were playing, was he always looking for you? To make sure you got the ball.
No doubt. I would tell him there's a couple guarantees in life: death, taxes, and I'm always going to be open. So I was always on his case. I was telling him he had to throw me the ball every play. So it was awesome. It was a good 2 years. We had a lot of fun and a lot of success.
That's awesome. So tell me about your podcasting. Tell me about your businesses, all the successes you're having there, and how much fun you're having doing all this. Because it looks like all the things that I see you're doing, it looks like you're just having a ton of fun.
Yeah, it's been great. I've really set out to build a media company, and as I mentioned, we have a few different companies or verticals you could say underneath it, but really build one ecosystem that they all complement each other, and everything's centered around content. Everything's centered around the social media content, the podcasts, being visible on the internet. I always say the people who own attention own opportunity. And if you can own attention on the internet, it opens up so many doors. I think about every opportunity I've had in my professional career since my football career, whether it be broadcasting or business deals or investments or brand partnerships, whatever it is, have all come from content. They've all come from that piece first. The reason I got invited on this podcast wasn't because someone recommended me. It was because you probably saw my content and wanted me to be on. So yeah. I've been a big believer in the power of content. Everything I've kind of created has come back to that. I think, I've had some really good people around me and I've built a team. It's something I invested in early. I knew I wanted to build something that was bigger than just myself. So early on, I had to, you have the decision to make. Do you take some profits and put them in your pocket, or do you invest it back in a team? And for a year there, I didn't make much money doing this, and I just invested in building out a team. And I have a great team now of guys who manage my day-to-day operations and my content and video editors and business deals and agents and everyone who makes the whole thing run, while I can kind of do what I'm good at, which is create content, get in front of people, network, and kind of make things happen. So it's been really good. I enjoy it. I've always been entrepreneurial and always loved this piece of it. If there's anything, it's that almost sometimes I feel like we have too much going on, and it's kind of the matter of focus and what are you going to focus on. But
Right.
I really enjoy it. I feel like we're making an impact, and it's been really successful from a business standpoint. And I feel like I've been able to bring some people along the journey with me, which has been fun.
So what do you think you're most proud of at this point?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a great question. I'd say two things. From a big picture standpoint, I'm most proud of how I've overcome adversity in my career. And at every single journey, I think I have seen the really high highs and the really, really low lows, and I've had some tough moments. And I have rebuilt myself multiple times and come out on the other side of it. And it hasn't always been easy, but it's certainly been worth it. And I'm really proud of that, of how it has not been rainbows and butterflies for me my whole career. And there's been things that have happened to me, self-inflicted or not self-inflicted. Both scenarios there. But every single time I chose to turn a negative situation into a positive. And it kind of goes into one of my favorite parables about life, you could say, is that you don't really know when something happens to you if it's good or bad for you until you see how it impacts the rest of your life.
Yeah.
At the time, I felt that getting fired at Arizona State was a really bad thing. But it turns out getting fired at Arizona State was one of the best things that probably happened to me, because it turned into this, what I built now in my media businesses and all the people I've met and the career I put together. And it just is a reminder that for anybody, that you may think in the moment that something's really bad, but you don't really know. You also don't really know if something's really good until you see how it impacts the rest of your life and what's going to happen. So I try to remember that. I'd say from like another thing when you ask what I'm most proud of, my mind also went to Penn State, because we went to Penn State. I went to Penn State during a really tough time in Penn State's history in 2013, and there were some bad things that happened at Penn State, but there were also a lot of people that were hurt by what happened at Penn State that had nothing to do with what happened at Penn State, and there was a community at Penn State of people who I felt like were broken, and a community that needed some hope, and also a football program that had done a lot of good for our state of Pennsylvania and for college football as a whole, that was on the brink of not even being able to function anymore after the NCAA sanctions that came out against the program. And I made a decision, as did my teammates in that recruiting class, to still go to Penn State during that time. And I say a lot that of all the things I've done, one of the things I'm most proud of is what we did at Penn State, and how I got to play a small role in allowing that program to heal, allowing that community to heal, and giving that community some hope in a time that it was really needed. So to think, people said Penn State football wouldn't field a team for years. They said they wouldn't compete with Temple. I mean, and to just a few years after that, to win a Big Ten championship in 2016, to be at the pinnacle of college football now year after year after year, just a decade later. I think, listen, I'm not naive to say that like I played a big role in it, but I think I played a small role, as did a lot of other people, and I'm really proud of that.
I mean, you were part of the rebuild, in the foundation of it, and now where they're at now, I don't think anybody even thinks about what happened back in the past.
No one. Yeah.
No one thinks
it's
about
funny. I talked to Coach Franklin about that. We joke because Coach Franklin walked in 2014 and walked into he walked into one of the most complex situations in college football history. Sanctions, a locker room that was divided, 5 offensive linemen on scholarship. I mean, just a community that half of them loved Joe Paterno, half of them didn't love Joe, half of them didn't want Coach Franklin to be there. I mean,
it was a mess.
Time. It was a mess, and I thought that we joke a lot about, I actually asked Coach Franklin this question on the podcast. I said, do you ever feel like what you've built here isn't fully appreciated and people don't realize what you've overcome to build this thing? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. I feel that way, but no one cares. And I thought it was a telling moment.
It's funny. Nobody cares, as long as they're winning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And when they're not losing or when they're not winning, then things get tough. But I mean, he's done one hell of a job there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
So
really has.
Who's your favorite interview so far? You've interviewed so many people. Who jumps out the top? Hey, I had so much fun with this guy.
Oh, there's been a lot, man. There's been a lot. I'd say this season of my podcast, some of the great ones. I had Marcus Freeman on my podcast, Notre Dame head coach. He's awesome, great
Yeah.
communicator, charismatic, cares about his players and his people. Sharon Moore was great at Michigan. He just a really good guy. I've known him for a while. Coach Franklin was awesome. Um, Man, I'm trying to think where we've been because it's been a whirlwind of traveling all over the
Yeah.
place and having different people on the show. Kenny Dillingham at Arizona State was cool. I got to go back to Arizona State and
Yeah.
see Kenny Dillingham, and that was my first time back since getting fired. So,
Yeah.
full circle moment to get invited back to have the head coach on my podcast, the head coach that replaced the head coach that I got fired with.
Now, how old is he? Is he like 31, 32? He's
Yeah,
a
I think
young
he's like
guy, right?
33, 30, something like that now. But yeah, he's a great head coach and a great
Yeah.
great guy. I've known him for a while too. The last year Dan Lanning was awesome at Oregon. Had some good people in there. So another one, Tim Pernetti, commissioner of the American Conference,
Yeah.
was really fun to talk to. I think he's got a great vision for the conference. Teresa Gold of the Pac-12 I had on, who was really good. So I've been trying to branch out, not just doing head coaches, but doing conference commissioners, athletic directors,
Yeah.
and people that impact college sports. Really my tagline is, candid, deep conversations with the people who shape college sports. And
Yeah.
that's head coaches, that's players, that's athletic directors, that's commissioners and business people and agents.
So it looks like you're having fun. So what's next? What's next for you? Or
Yeah.
is there a next?
No, I mean, I guess what's next is just to continue to build. I mean, I love this. I love operating. I love being in the weeds on the content and being part of everything that we're building. And I think I'm definitely in the build phase right now of put foot on the gas, trying to do a lot of different things. I don't know. We'll see if it ever slows down, but I mean, what's next? The immediate next is college football season. I mean, it'll be here before we know it, and it'll be summertime and getting ready for the fall. I'll be calling games, I'm sure, or traveling the country, going to college football games, doing the podcast. So I'm excited for it. It's gonna be a great season and a lot of fun to look forward to.
One last question.
Yeah.
What advice can you give to a young guy now, college athlete coming out of school who wants to break into your crazy field of media? What advice can you give them?
Yeah, my mind goes to like 10 different places. I'll say I see young people a lot who tell me they want to be in media or be a content creator or be a sports broadcaster. And yet I'll get a DM and I'll look at their page and they have posted no videos and no content. And I always say, listen, if you want to break through in any field, but especially in media, you got to be posting content on social media. That's number one. You have an opportunity right there that is so easy and so simple. Start creating content. And I think people all the time get worried about, well, what are people going to think? What if it's not good? What if the content sucks? Well, here's the good news. If the content sucks, no one's going to see it anyway because of the algorithm. No one's going to see the content. You'll get no views. So, and on top of that, Jeff, you know this, man, like no one's thinking about you. No one. One of my favorite things, and my team always says this. We have a few slogans. We always say, no one knows who you are and no one's thinking about you. And we have this tendency to overthink that, like, we were talking the other day about a piece of content I put out, and we had posted a video like 2 months ago, and then we made a new video. And I said to my team, I said, that video is very similar to the one we posted 2 months ago. And my team said back to me, you think anyone remembers what video you posted 2 months ago? I'm like, that's a great point. Like, no one's thinking about me as much as I'm thinking about myself. But we get caught up in that spotlight effect, right? Where we think everyone's thinking about us all the time. And really, everyone's just thinking about themselves. So when you realize that, it's actually liberating. It allows you to take chances and take risk and understand that no one really cares. Not in a bad way, but no one really cares about you. Like, just live your life and have fun and do what makes you happy. So for people that want to break into this space, put yourself out there, take on risk, start creating content, and opportunities will come. Every opportunity I've had has come from content. And I'd say that the final piece, another big thing I always say, and my team and I talk about it, is that for a lot of businesses, a lot of people, consistency is the differentiator, and that it's easy to do it for a few days. It's easy to post a video every single day. I'll say this. I know for a fact that there's a lot of people who post better content than me, who are better looking than me, who can speak better, who have better ideas, who are better analysts about college football. But I don't think anyone's more consistent than we are at posting content about it. And I know for the last 3 years since we started this, every single darn day, whether it's Easter, New Year's Eve, rain, shine, whatever, birthdays, we have posted multiple pieces of content every single day. It doesn't mean they all were great pieces of content. They weren't all going viral, but every single day we have been consistent and put ourselves out there and put me out there. And it's paid off and it's worked. So we always say that, on top of the most important piece is that the consistency is what will separate everyone in the end.
That's great advice. Great advice. Well, Adam, we've been chatting now for, almost 50 minutes. A lot of cool stuff. Is there anything I haven't asked you yet that you think we should hit before we wrap it up?
I don't know. Nothing really comes to mind. I've enjoyed this conversation. It's always good to you ask great questions and got me introspective a little bit on some of that stuff. So I appreciate it. But nothing comes to mind. I appreciate you having me on, and I love what you're doing with this podcast. I know you've kind of been you've been a great example of consistency on doing this podcast. And a lot of people do podcasts and do 5 episodes, and then stop because it's not easy. You got people like me canceling their episodes, and you got guests you got to track down and edit it. It's a lot. But if you can string it together. I always talk about too with my team. I'm going on a theme here, but we talk about at bats. And that like every single thing you do is an at bat, and we're not going to hit a home run every time, but you definitely won't hit any if you don't get any at bats. And the more at bats we get, the better chances we have of something going viral, of some business seeing our content, of some brand wanting to sponsor, of someone wanting me to speak to their group. Like the more at bats we get, the better we'll be. And you've had a bunch of at bats now on this podcast, and it's been cool to see your success.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Well, somebody told me a long time ago, if you're not going to do 100 podcasts, don't do one.
Yeah, it's a great point. And you're almost at 100, right?
I'm at you're number 85.
Okay, there we go. I love it.
So we're getting there. So Adam, listen, I appreciate you being on the show, taking the time, and keep up the great work, man. What you're doing is incredible, and it's fun to watch. And I'm always like, who's he interviewing next? Like, I can't wait to see the next one, which is good. So I'm looking forward to seeing Coach Franklin up there on your site and listen to all the good content you have with him. But keep up the good work, and love to have you back again in the future.
Yeah, let's do it. Appreciate it, Jeff. Thanks so much.